following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to Gate City Chronicles. I'm Kevin Avard, your host. Today I'm joined with Andy Harthcock, and you own the Djinn Spirits here in Nashua.
I do.
And I'm going to welcome you to the show, and let's talk about your business.
Great, thanks a lot.
It's kind of been a hidden spot right off of Amherst Street.
It is. It's a little bit awkward to find the very first time, but if you're heading out of Nashua on Amherst there, if you know where the Country Tavern restaurant is, basically if you take a left right there, like you're going to Country Tavern, and then just turn a left right behind it, there's a long industrial building that looks like it doesn't contain anything of interest. But if you drive all the way to the end and park down there, you'll find we're in suite number 9.
Suite number 9.
We have a tasting room that you can get a taste. You can see the different products that we have for sale there, and then you can take a tour of the facility in the back.
How big is the facility?
It's a total 3,000 square feet. We have 1,000 up front in the nice finished reception area. I've got a bar there and pictures, things for people to look at there. And then in the back, I've got another 2,000 square foot of production area.
Now, we were talking off camera how that you're an engineer and you know how to
Correct.
build things, and you took a special interest in the spirits, if you will. How did that all happen? How did that come together?
Well, I had been looking for a number of years for an idea that I could start a business with. And so just naturally being curious about the way things worked, I just went through several different topics that typically made my children laugh at me, but things like making cheese. All right, so I had a cheese making bout there. All right, I made some decent cheese. All right, some wasn't terribly good, but
not DiGiorno's, but
no, yeah, right, but anyway, I figured there's plenty of good cheese out there, and it didn't really hold my attention there. So it actually, I tell my wife it was her fault. She just made a stray comment one night. She had just been reading an article about craft distilling, and she said, distilling would be fun. And she walked off, and I went, wow, it would. And I started, I got on the internet and started reading up on it. Well, she goes to work the next day was a Saturday. She goes to work. By the time she got back, I had already completed a trial run at a still, but I had to, she claims that I tore up her pressure cooker. I to this day, am trying to convince her that I repurposed it. But I had a successful experiment, So she walks in the door and I'm going, honey, look what I did. And she looks around going, look what you did to my kitchen. So she hasn't forgiven me for that yet.
So that begs the question: were the feds at the door? Hey, you got a distillery here.
Well, they could have, yeah, because truth be told, that's not legal to distill things at your house. But obviously, we didn't want to sell anything, and we just kept a low profile. What I did was purely academic, and I went through about 3 or 4 versions of still design. The last one was basically a scale model of the one that I ended up building in the facility.
How does it transfer from being illegal to legal? How did you make that, after you say, hey, I can do this, now I'm going to build a machine or a distillery to do this legally? What was that process?
Well, basically what you have to do is study a good bit of information that the government has available on some websites there. And the sequence of steps is that you find a place and you buy a still. So they actually force you to make the financial outlay first, so you're committed.
Right.
But I made sure I did my homework before I got to that point there. And so once you've got that, you have to first make the city people happy, and I really had them lined up. I talked to them well before I found the facility, gave them a briefing on here's what I want to do, and here's the timeline, the sequence of events. And
So you go to planning or zoning or both, or?
Well, in this case, I found a facility that was already zoned for industrial.
Right.
So we didn't have to change the zoning there. Also, the facility had perfectly adequate fire extinguishers in it, so it really was shovel ready, and that was one reason I selected the place I did.
Right.
It would have been ideal if I could have found a place with higher ceilings. So as it was, I had to modify my still design, but did that, you know. So anyway, I got the city people on board, went back and did all the filings with the feds. They have to see all of the paperwork on the facility and know that you've got the correct equipment to do the job with. And they want to know that you're bonded by an insurance company, so that it really, at the end of the day, it comes down to them protecting their revenue. So,
right.
Because they obviously are going to get a cut of everything that I produce, and likewise with the state.
Well,
so
thank you very much.
Yeah.
At your expense, obviously, you're going to cover their expenses.
Oh, that's correct.
Yeah.
You bet. And so, fortunately, I had everything together. I'd done my homework fairly well, and so it only took them about 45 days to grant the license. So last August, I got my federal license, and with that in hand, I went to the state people.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, that was a fast turnaround.
For a government agency to act?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Their average posted on the website said 6 months, and I was really concerned that it was going to, if it really took that long, I was going to be
Yeah, because you're paying
in a
the rent, you've got the
financial crunch
facility.
at that point. Right, exactly so. But like I said, I had spent enough time researching exactly what they needed that I had a pretty good handle on what they wanted. I'm a program manager by day anyway, and so I know how to follow a set of rules, and
Right.
So I had a pretty good submission put together for them by the time that I found the facility. Had already had my the main parts of my equipment purchased and in a storage facility. So I signed on the lease one day, I moved the equipment in a couple of days later, and it was within 2 weeks after that that I was able to do the filing. And so.
How did you know that when you went from the kitchen that you had success? Did you create a product that you said, honey, come here, try this?
Well, yeah. As I was experimenting with different, well, the first thing you find out if you distill something and you don't do anything to it, it tastes lousy. Anything that comes straight off the still has a very sharp flavor. And the first thing that I produced, I was very disappointed, going, well, this tastes terrible. And then I started researching and talking to people, and what do you do to get rid of that new spirit flavor? And so that's the primary challenge that I think I've done a really good job of overcoming with one of our two products is called Beat 3, and it's a white whiskey. White meaning it hasn't been aged. All right, so your typical whiskeys are brown spirits. They've been aged for some number of years in barrels.
Right.
But a white whiskey or a moonshine or a white dog, these are all products that you can find now. They're relatively new to the marketplace, but there's a fairly wide variation in the quality of these products. You can walk in the state liquor store right now and pick up something called moonshine that honestly tastes terrible.
Okay.
All right. And I wish people would do that first and then try my stuff,
Right.
and they'll understand what the difference is. Because what I do is I'll take the spirits when they come off the still, I'll put them in small barrels. Now a small barrel will age things faster, but it's a small charred American oak barrel, and that charring inside the barrel acts like a charcoal filter, and so that starts stripping off some of that new spirit flavor.
Right.
After 4 days in the barrel, then I'll still take it and I'll do one more step on it. I'll run it through a charcoal filter for about an hour, just kind of cycling it through like that. And then when I proof it down to about 100 proof or 50%.
Now, how do you do that? How do you know what a proof is? Is there a little thermometer that says, well, there's a certain amount of alcohol level?
Well, actually, you use a thermometer in combination with what's called a hydrometer. And a hydrometer is a glass, basically a glass bulb that has a glass stem. It's all sealed, and it's made with there's a scale that's printed on the inside of it there, and they calibrate it to a certain weight. And so what happens is you lower that in a liquid that's some amount alcohol and some amount water, and it will float at a different level.
Interesting.
And the scale will show you. You look at right where the liquid level is, and that points to the scale, and it tells you what the proof of the alcohol
And the
is.
proof has nothing to do with basically the flavor. The flavor comes from where?
Well, the flavor, they talk about congeners, which is an interesting word that means present at birth. And in this case, it's at the birth of well, you essentially start with beer if you're making a whiskey. You'll start with a grain. And I start with, for my whiskey, I'll start with a 100% barley malt. And I'll mix up about 450 gallons of that, because the kettle that I use in the still has a 150-gallon working capacity. So I can drive the still 3 times with one big batch of beer that I start with. And so those flavors come from the malt itself. They come from the yeast that we use, and the interaction of the yeast. If the yeast is kept at different temperatures, then it will create different esters, different volatile compounds that all have that contribute as congeners to this. And
Do you filter it like the Jack Daniels does with, you know how they burn their oak and then they...
Well, that's similar to what I'm talking about. When I use the charred oak barrels,
Yeah.
The charring on the inside of the barrels
Does the same thing.
That's it. It's basically charcoal filtering as it's sitting in the barrels there. And like I said, then when I take it out of the barrels, I run it through another charcoal filter that actually uses charred coconut husk as the filter media. Why that works, I don't know. I just know it works.
So it's good for you.
It's good. Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Now, you were saying earlier that whiskey is basically beer all grown up.
That's it, right? Yeah.
That's
Yep.
interesting.
When beer grows up, it's whiskey.
Now, how did you come up with gin spirits? With the name?
Well, like I said, we started the idea of the company about 2 years ago. And so it was about 4 months after that my wife and I just happened to be playing a Scrabble game. Now, we play with somewhat loose rules to where we can refer to a dictionary. We're not really hardcore Scrabble people, but I had DJINN as letters there. And I'm thinking, well, I know that's a word, but I looked it up and I realized the pronunciation, the D is silent, so you just pronounce it gin, just as though it was spelled G-I-N. I'm thinking, oh, what a cool double entendre that is. And then I said, then I'm looking at the definition. Well, it's a spirit somewhat similar to a genie. And I'm thinking, oh, gin is a spirit. Gin spirits. That's actually a triple entendre if you think about it. And it was such a cute wordplay that I said, we got to make this into a business name here. So.
Interesting. Yeah. And you've been in business for 2 years now.
No, well, we started the idea 2 years ago. We've been open almost 3 months now. We opened just before Christmas, this past December.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, how many flavors of spirits do you have? It's not just the White Lightning, is it?
Right now we have the 2. We've got the white whiskey and we've got a gin. I mean, with a name like Gin Spirits, I'm thinking I have to have a gin.
Right.
All right. So, yeah. So we have a gin also that is very unique. It has a slight color to it actually that comes from the botanicals. I use what's called a vapor infusion process to get the botanical flavor in there. And as you might be aware, the primary flavor in gin is juniper. And if you go back in history, it was the Dutch that first started producing gin. And the old name for it was Genever, which was the Dutch word for juniper. Now, since then, in the decade since then, we've shortened it to call it gin. But by law, the primary flavor has to be juniper. But beyond that, you can do anything you want to. So we did some research on what botanicals we wanted to use and the kind of flavor profile that we wanted to hit. And I'll have to say we did a pretty good job with our first trial. We'll be tweaking it, from batch to batch, but it's pretty close to what we want.
Now, are they found in local state liquor stores yet? Or
my products?
Yeah.
Actually, right now, it's only available at the distillery, although that's going to be changing over the next few months. This past Friday, I had a milestone event. I dropped off 3 cases of whiskey at the state liquor warehouse, and it's going to start by being available at key restaurants that we're going to start working with to have some events and Would like to find restaurants that are sort of upscale, that have a good mixologist, so the mixologist can do some novel things with the drinks. We can have my wife and I there, hear the distillers to talk about the products, and kind of create more of a buzz there in the different restaurants.
No
So,
double entendre there.
no, oh, none intended whatsoever there, right? But build up an awareness, at least in the local customer base, before we start releasing it to the state liquor stores there. But it will eventually be. But for right now, today, the only place is you've got to come to the distillery and take a taste, have a tour, and buy a bottle.
Wonderful. Now, do you have a website where people can
We do.
contact you?
www.djinnspirits. Of course, that's DJINNSPIRITS.com.
Right. And you'll be having an event. Actually, by the time this shows, you'll be having an event this coming weekend. But when people see this, it'll have already
Yeah, we will have
passed.
already done it by then. But still, we're open on the weekends for the public, 10 to 5, Saturdays and Sundays. And we can, if somebody has a group of people that they would like to invite out for a private event, I'm open for that as well. We would do that. We could schedule that during the week after 5:30 p.m. or after normal business hours.
Now, when you get all popular and everything, you'll be able to keep up with the demand with the liquor store, I would assume.
Well, yeah, that's a challenge. It's an interesting balancing act that I'm doing right now between production and marketing, and I'm gradually ratcheting up both of them as we go. I'm having to learn, ways to be more efficient with the production and produce more per batch, and then obviously I'm trying to do as much outreach as I can to let people know that we're there.
Well, I congratulate you on starting a business. There's a lot more to it, I'm sure. I mean, you have to, you got to have that trade secret, your recipe stored like Mr. Krabs in that little safe there with the Krabby Patties. And obviously, that's going to change a little bit over time.
Right.
But then you have to copyright it, I would assume,
Well, not necessarily.
or trademark it, or something to that effect.
Well, the name Djinn Spirits, of course, is trademarked.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, in terms of the recipes, we do have to file anything other than standard type recipes. They have to be filed with the feds, but that's not really a trademark or a copyright issue. That's more of the feds wanting to make sure that if we call something a certain type of drink, that it really is that type of drink.
Okay. Right. So there's not a proprietary type of ownership of the ingredients or of the recipe?
Not really.
Yeah. Interesting.
I'm fairly open. Like I said, I just described the two-step filtration process that I use on the whiskey. I start with an all malt mash bill, so a distiller listening to this could
kind of figure it out.
Probably figure out what.
Now, do you really have to use copper for your distillery, or copper tubing?
You don't have to. It actually helps from a chemical standpoint. If you have sulfur compounds in what you've been fermenting, then it will tend to scrub that somewhat. And I have a small amount of copper at just the right location in the still to provide some of that effect. The bulk of my still is stainless steel, but there is one point where there's condensation occurring, where there's a sort of a constant flow of vapor coming up, and some of it is condensing, and so those are copper coils there with some copper mesh and packed in there.
That's interesting. Well, I'm glad that you came on the show. Why don't you close this out? You contact you how again? Through the website? You're on Facebook as well?
Right. We're on the website, www.djinnspirits. We're on Facebook. If they want to email us, they can email us at info@djinnspirits.com.
And you're located?
And we're located just off of Amherst or 101A as you come out of Nashua heading west. Behind Country Tavern. It's off the road is, the address is 2 Townsend West, and we're in suite number 9.
Okay, and come taste the spirits.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for Gate City Chronicles. Please visit the facility, check it out, and patronize, if you will, your spirits. Until next week, that's it for now. Thank you for watching Gate City Chronicles, and we want to thank our sponsor, Avard Dean of Clean, the carpet cleaner in Nashua. You can reach him at 603-630-1743. And if you would like some more information about Gate City Chronicles or want to be a guest, contact me at gatecitychronicles@gmail.com. Until next week, thanks for watching.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.